Hello everyone, today we are going to talk about a beautiful poem, A Day by Emily Dickinson. It's in grade 12 compulsory English paper. Before we discuss over this poem, like we have got these questions to answer. So just have an eye onto these slides. What kind of day do you like? Or is it a rainy day or a sunny day or a foggy day? So, and you have been asked the reason why. Okay, I believe it depends on your mood, like whether you are in a happy mood, jolly mood. Like if you are in a happy mood, you may enjoy a rainy day, or if you are in a sad mood, like you may like a bright or a sunny day. So that depends the kind of mood you are in, and that is my personal opinion. Sometimes, even if it's pretty cold, you may enjoy a rainy day or maybe a foggy day. But if you are not with your people, you're not with your parents, even a very bright and sunny day, you may not enjoy. Okay, so that depends. So how does the sun tell us about different stages of a day? And definitely, yeah. When the sun is eastward, it indicates morning, and when it is midday, the sun, we know that it is somewhere up, and we can guess the time. And setting sun indicates the end of the day, and the day coming to an end, and so welcoming the night. So the sun tells us about the different stages of a day. And how are they comparable to different stages of life? Here is a question, beautiful question. We can compare the different stages of our life to different parts of the day. So, of course, morning is the beginning, and it indicates the beginning of life. Whereas midday indicates the prime time of life. So young life, a person becomes fully mature, and whereas a setting sun or a waning sun may stand for the end of life, or maybe when the sun is waning, and it indicates that the person is in an old stage of life. So different stages of life are very comparable to different parts of the day. Okay, so let's go ahead about the poem. And so it's been composed by metaphysical poet Emily Dickinson. She was an American poet, and she had an orthodox and conservative approach to Christianity. So she was not publicly recognized during her lifetime. However, she gained popularity through her posthumously published poems. Means her poems were published after her death. And I have read that it was her sister who made a collection of her poems and published those poems in a poetic anthology after the poet Emily Dickinson passed away. So moving ahead. Okay, the poet usually talks about, in her poems we find her talking about the wonders of nature and the identity of the self, immortality of the soul, right? The human soul is, in her opinion, is immortal and it doesn't die. So such like ideas she imparts in her poems. And here is the term metaphysical poetry. So it's a metaphysical poetry is started by a group of 17th century English poets. It has its chief feature is strange imagery and paradoxical statements, and they also make an inventive use of language that is concise and very sharp comparison between two dissimilar things. We find these like features in a metaphysical poem, and metaphysical poets are more interpretive than expressive. Okay. And the poem's core idea means the main idea. So I want you to have an eye onto these slides. You can see a side, so a rising sun, and so it's beam onto the different territory. In the poem, Dickinson, through the use of brilliant imageries and symbols, describes a beautiful day that leads the children from innocence to experience. So it is a lyrical poem, and it describes the poet's personal feelings and emotion and of looking at a day. And she describes sunrise and sunset. So Of course, when she describes sunrise and sunset, she shares her personal emotion and experience. Okay. The poem portrays the beauty of life and uncertainty of death. Yeah, of course, life is very beautiful, but it's very painful that we don't know when we die. So the death is uncertain. I mean, death is certain, but when we die, it is really uncertain. So that idea can be generated from this poem. Let's read the poem. I will tell you how the sun rose. I will tell you how the sun rose, a ribbon at a time. The steeple swam in amethyst, the news like squirrel ran. So I have given you the word meaning. Steeples, they are tall towers above the roof of a church. And amethyst stands for purple or precious stone or diamond. And here in the first stanza of the poem, the poet says she wants to tell her past experience of looking at the sunrise. And according to her, the sun rose ribbon at a time, means little by little. It came over the horizon. And when it came up and the highest part of the church, right, they got very bright and they looked as bright as pieces of diamond. And the news of the daybreak that went to the different households so they moved very fast. And here she compares the same thing to the flow of light to different doors when there is daybreak. Of course, we know that it's not only we people who open the doors and windows and come out. Even in the neighborhood, our next door neighbors, other neighbors, they open their doors and windows and they come out. The hectic pace of life begins the very time when the sun rises. Okay, so that idea has been said in the first stanza of the poem. Now let's see the second stanza. The hills untied their bonnets, the bubblings began. Then I said softly to myself, that must have been the sun. So in the second stanza of the poem, the poet adds more details of the sunrise. So when the sun rose, was that the hills that looked as though they were covered in the hats, or they were just taking their bonnets or hats off, and they became more visible. So of course it happens when the sun rises, and we can see the sunlight dissipates the fog and the hilltops become more visible. So she makes a comparison here, and the hills, they look as though they were taking off their hats, means they become more visible. So that idea has been given, and it's the very time that the birds like bobolinks, sparrows, or maybe other birds, they begin to chirp outside the window, and all these effects are brought by the morning sun. So by referring to these things, right? Steeples becoming very bright, and people opening their doors and windows and starting their hectic pace of life. Similarly, the hills becoming more visible with the dissipation of the fog, and likewise, the birds chirping in the surrounding. All these effects we can notice when the day begins. So this is the first part of the poem. The two stanzas, they talk about the poet talks about the rising sun, the beginning of the day. Okay, moving ahead. So here are the two other stanzas of the poem, and it is the second half of the poem. And so in this poem, in this stanza, the poet says he doesn't have any clear idea of how the sun set. Okay, let's see the lines first of all. But how he said, I know not. There seemed a purple style, which little yellow boys and girls were climbing all the while. So actually, the poet knows the way how the sun sets. But here, what she wants to imply, or the poetic person now wants to say, is that it's rather unclear. So she cannot exactly give the description the way the sun set. Okay. Nevertheless, she goes on adding the ideas. When the sun set, what happened? There was a purple style over the hill, some yellow boys and girls, they were climbing it relentlessly. So here this color yellow is very meaningful, and you know it when the sun is waning, it is setting, and yeah, its beams they turn rather yellowish. And this yellow also stands for the innocence of children. Okay, now, probably it refers to the time that people, yeah, they are in their journey and they are climbing up a hill and they are thinking of getting to their destination. When the day comes to an end, evening begins and people have to find a place to get in, sleep for the night. Okay, so relentlessly climbing, and when we begin our journey, we are at the beginning phase of our life. But when our journey comes with the end of the day and we are in the mature phase of life, so here we can see two layers of meaning. One is a direct meaning, the people climbing over the hill and the evening comes and they have to get into their shelter. The other is that when people have they almost completed their journey, and it is the time that they have to get into the sleep, probably the finite, sleep, that is impending death. Okay, so I think this idea has been imparted in this stanza of the poem. And until when did the poetic persona see them climbing the hill, right? So that's given in this stanza, next stanza of the poem. Till when they reach the other side, a domini in grey put gently up the evening bars and led the flock away. So here what we understand is that when the journey came to an end there, so it was probably the time to get to rest for the night, let's say, the literal meaning. And so there came a Christian priest, Domini, to receive the people and who could probably take them to a shelter. Okay? And what did the Domini do? He put up the evening bars gently and he guided them all to get to rest. Okay? So the literal meaning is that it was evening and the people were taken away led by the Domini for their rest. Okay? But the symbolic meaning, the figurative meaning is that, of course, the Domini here stands for the messenger of God. And when their journey came to an end, he came there to take them away, probably to the other side of life. Okay, that is unseen part of life. And that is the eternal sleep. That is the final sleep. So this is what exactly happens in life. So this idea has been beautifully imparted in the poem. Okay, so you can see these pictures. So the first one shows the sunrise and the second one shows the sunset. All right. Here I want to present the paraphrase of this poem. The poem has altogether 4 stanzas. The first 2 stanzas describe the sunrise, whereas the last 2 stanzas describe the sunset. Okay. The poem opens up with the description of a daybreak, that means the morning, and the poetic persona says that the sun rose little by little with its polychromatic rays, and the steeples of the church were covered with its beaming light. The steeples looked as bright as pieces of diamond, and with the sunrise, the hectic life of people got started too. And at the same time, the hills got brightened and they looked as though they put their hats off. Likewise, the birds started singing their ditties welcoming the morning. The speaker or the poetic persona in the poem, maybe the poet herself, observed all these effects changes brought by the sun. In the third stanza of the poem, the speaker says that she had no idea how the sun set. Okay? But at the far side, she could see little and innocent boys and girls climbing on the steps. And probably they are coming to the completion of their journey. And when they reach the other side of the hill, In the fading light of the day, the speaker saw a pastor, a dominie, welcoming them and taking them away for night. So in this poem we can see a few images. Actually, an image in literary context is a mental picture created by means of words. They may appeal to our different senses. For example, the steeple swam in amethyst and hills untied their bonnets. They remind the readers how the first rays of the sun illuminate our surrounding. Another image in the poem, boys and girls climbing all the while, gives us a picture of tiresome climb of people to scale greater height to gain confidence or maturity. And some symbols that we find in this poem, okay, the rising sun that stands for, or it symbolizes the beginning or birth, whereas the setting sun stands for end of life. And the yellow boys and girls, they stand for innocence. Steeples, dominie, these things come from Christianity. They have some religious meaning, and they also refer to the call of the goat. Okay, we can take the dominie as a messenger of God. Similarly, fast-moving squirrels in the poem symbolizes the frantic pace of life, very hectic, very busy pace of life. So of course, the word grey, that's a color that symbolizes the impending night, or that is death. One more time, a very short summary of the poem. I just want to read it out. The speaker in the poem is an innocent little child. The child makes its own conclusions about how the sun rises and sets. The child finds a wonder in the way the beaming light of the morning sun covers the landscape. The nature awakens as the news of the sunrise travels very fast. The little birds begin to chirp, enlivening the beauty of the nature. The second part of the poem is about the end of the day. The speaker doesn't know how the sun has set. The sky gets darkened, and over the hills he sees little kids climbing. The kids are led by a pastor to rest for the night. The whole poem can be interpreted as an extended metaphor about life and death. So it's a metaphorical poem. A day is a metaphorical representation of life. When there is a birth, it brings radiance, it brings happiness in the surrounding. It is a time for joy. A newly born child is just like the rising sun. It goes on gathering strength, courage, confidence with the flow of time. Okay? However, death is always unknown. Right? So unknowingly, a little child attains maturity, walking in the journey of its life. Human life, we are not immortal, we are not forever and anon. Like the setting sun, the same person has to go far and away, probably into that darkness forever. Therefore, the poem has some references to Christianity. The steeples and the dominie give religious meaning. The dominie guiding the children in the evening is probably heeding the God's will. In totality, in summation, the poem A Day tells us that the different phases of life are very much comparable to the different hours of a day. That is to say, different parts of a day. Okay? I believe you have understood the poem A Day by Emily Dickinson, and here are a few questions that we see given in our textbook. So, bye-bye and have a wonderful time ahead.